Bismillahirrahmanirrahim and Assalamu alaikum to everybody. President of Habib University, Wasif Rizvi Saab. It is because of him I'm here. He is totally inspirational, as you would testify now after his presentation. How can you refuse him? After a long trip coming from Astana and a miserable time on flights, I had to say okay to him, I'll come. Dear students, distinguished parents, faculty members, and all other guests, at the outset, let me congratulate all graduating students of 2025 class. I'm sure there's a lot that you can look forward to. I must say I never was able to attend any of my convocation, so I'm delighted to be attending over, 225 students' convocation or some number like that. I'll try to be very brief on my own background, which has nothing to do with my degrees, but to say the major driver for who I am and who I ended up being over the years. And as I evolved, it was my father, Mr. Munir Akhtar, Federal Secretary of Ministry of Finance. He told everybody, and I'm talking about old times when women were not either educated or kept at home, or there was a resistance by the family's elders that you can't leave girls out. He allowed me to go abroad when I was only 20 years old, which was a major shock to a lot of people. Now, of course, you all have the world to go to, and I'm sure your parents will be supporting you with full heart, like my father did. Let me tell you that I was searching for motivational quotes, and because I'm going to be speaking on climate dynamics, I was looking for President Obama's quote, who was instrumental in supporting United Nations for adoption of climate accord called Paris Agreement, that was signed with great difficulty and opposition from a number of countries in 2016. The opposition was that if you try to address environment, you will stifle growth. And then we presented in the group of 20, the G20, that it is far from that. On the contrary, addressing climate will spur growth. So a lot of struggle has gone into the Paris Agreement, and I would encourage you to read it up. It's an accord which was created and adopted with great difficulty, but it is guiding path for everybody. The Treaty of Climate Change, the treaty covers climate change, mitigation, and adaptation. I recall talking to the world leaders with United Nations Secretary General in Paris and also in New York, convincing that climate will safeguard the world and its population, which is growing at a very fast pace. So all we need to do is be focused on climate action. So while I could not track President Obama's quote, given that I was writing this in a rush, I must say I was startled by reading the quote from Michelle Obama, wife of President Obama, that captures well my experience. One of the lessons that I grew up was to always stay true to yourself and never let what somebody else says distract you from your goals. Unquote. Please keep this quote always in your mind, because when you're working, there's a lot of distraction. There's a lot of adverse competition. There's a lot of noise in the system. And as long as you are clear-headed, committed, you will be on the right path for yourself. In presenting my work on climate change dynamics and finance, it is important to recognize that in the real world, we must care for nature, ecology, and ecosystem. Look at the whole of the system, as they say. Protection and preservation has to be an integral part of development. No development is sustainable without nature, ecology, and ecological standards. It may sound to be expensive, but in long term, it is cheaper. Over the past decades, global climate, a cross-border phenomenon, has worsened. The World Meteorological Organization forecasts that global temperatures have risen and are likely to rise further in the range of 1.2 to 1.9 degrees. In Asia, indicators are alarming as surface temperatures, glacier retreat in Pakistan itself, and sea levels have risen. Lots of Asian economies are below sea level. Most of geography, in fact, is below sea level already. It's all a man-made disaster, as we used to say. Growing warming and the associated vulnerabilities and risks have resulted in significant losses of human lives and finance. Forecast is that inherent dangers to global and regional economies and their ecosystem, people and infrastructure will be phenomenal and scary. It's not to scare you, but to prepare you to be committed to preserving nature. Pakistan is ranked 5th most vulnerable country to climate change, even though it contributes only about 0.88% of world's greenhouse gas emission. Isn't that ironical? World Bank ranks Pakistan's vulnerability 37 out of 171. Adverse climate generates significant economic and social adversities, in particular multidimensional poverty. Securing the right level and quality of climate financing is critical for Pakistan. With strategic and efficient planning, innovation, and wider participation of public, this threat could be transformed into great opportunities. In particular, it can promote sustainability and prosperity of our economy and people. Climate investments required for a response to Pakistani climate challenges in 2030 are estimated to be in the range of US dollar 40 to 50 billion per year. Ironically, Pakistan's total current climate financing flows are estimated at only 1/6 to 1/8 of the requirement. Climate change has accelerated the frequency of natural disasters such as floods, drought, cyclones, shifts in weather patterns, reduction in fresh water supplies, and declining agriculture productivity. It costs a lot if you add up the arithmetics of all this. Pakistan, at Conference of Parties, what is famously called COP26, declared it aims for a 50% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, including a 15% target reduction using country's own resources and a 35% target reduction subject to availability of international grant financing. As a nation, we ought to recognize the lethal consequences of climate changes. We need deliberations to offer perspectives on the climate strategy, explore avenues for financing an enormous funding gap, and strategizing insights towards pathways. Let me offer a few critical insights. First, Pakistan's climate vulnerabilities are likely to compound because of own recklessness, transmission of growing cross-border vulnerabilities and risks. Of course, we have enemies on different sides that are affecting the flow of waters here, but the fact of matter is there is no barrier to climate. It's all up there. So it affects you. And of course, the second major crisis we have is the demographics. And the pressures are growing. Securing climate finance is an imperative for Pakistan, as climate change is one of the biggest risks given the rise in warming levels, and country, as I said, is below sea level. My second point is that projected total cost of climate inaction in Pakistan, as estimated by UK study, is US dollar 250 billion, is going to be 250 billion by 2030, and about US dollars 1.2 trillion by 2050. This estimate is based on critical vulnerabilities faced by Pakistan, such as, I mentioned, population displacement, damage to physical assets and settlements, the cost of relocation, economic damages caused by agriculture, crops, livestock, and textile sectors. My third point is that given inherent risks, IMF staff report findings are that a climate shock will lead to a 3% decline in GDP, which remains well below its steady state, even 13 years after the shock. This evidence is in IMF's latest report. Everybody talks about the economy and other things. This gets missed out, and I met the IMF delegation when I was in Islamabad a few days back, and IMF is going to have conditions relating to how do we manage the climate. And there is dedicated funding that IMF offers to its clients' countries. Notably, if an additional 1% of GDP on top of the conventional public investment ratio is invested in adaptation infrastructure, Pakistan GDP will return to its steady state 5 years after the shock. So here is empirical evidence confirming the positive impact. My fourth point, climate action is and has to be significant priority. Its short-term challenges, that is to compound in emerging and distant future. Pakistan's climate scenario points to rise in above global temperature averages, which would impact frequency and intensity of disasters, food and water scarcity, agriculture, and human health. Sea levels rise would threaten coastal infrastructure, as it has done in Japan and Indonesia. Lethal impacts. History has been written pretty painfully of some of the countries that have gone through these adversities. So biodiversity is also at risk, and the overall economy faces a major shock when this happens. A global 3.3 degree warming could lead to a reduction in crop yields by up to 19% for maize, 16% for wheat, and 8% for rice, and high incidence damage to several species and disproportionate impact on marginalized groups. So we will have food insecurity if we do not address this issue. To implement climate financing pathways requires, as I said, a whole of economy approach to protect nature and drive inclusive socio-economic development for Pakistan. Let me just briefly elaborate on these thoughts. Nationally determined contribution and national adaptation plans, through nationally determined contribution and national adaptation plans, which is the jargon, of course, related to commitments of the countries relating to the Conference of Party commitments, Pakistan has established sector-based goals, action plans, key performance indicators, and identified respectively responsible stakeholders. It took a long time for countries to agree to all this, which I'm capturing in few minutes. Strategic approach towards maximizing and optimizing climate finance is critical now, given the country's international debt burden and limited domestic private financing sources. Financing for multilateral development banks should now be prioritized towards adaptation and resilience projects, tackle policy barriers, and leverage local private financing participation through blended finance mechanism, through the de-risking tools and concessional loans, so and so forth. Another point which is important is to tap and deploy climate financing. Pakistan needs to nurture local green financial markets backed by innovative green financing tools and solutions, and their associated suitable implementation mechanism to leverage a wider market participation for meeting the targeted climate finance. Furthermore, the line ministries and the provincial governments need to come together and have common and harmonious approaches. Pakistan's legal and institutional framework for public-private partnership at the federal and provincial levels need to be fortified from a climate lens by integrating climate-related costs and consideration in project design and evaluation stages. To conclude, quantum and quality of climate finance required is significant, and progress on this journey is underway. Let me end by reinforcing Zig Ziglar, a prominent American author and a thinker, and the quote is, "Your attitude, not your aptitude, will determine your altitude." Let me repeat, your attitude, not your aptitude, will determine your altitude. So think high. What you get by achieving goals is not as important as what you become by achieving your goals. Thank you, Wasif Saab, for having me here.